Hi everyone, we're here on the Ananda Rose channel. You're here with me, Kirsty Marie, the host of the Neurodiversity Controversy Segment, and today I'm here with Josh Woodgate-Jackson. Welcome, Josh.
Thank
So
you.
Josh has a movement, if you've seen him on Facebook or in other places, and it's called SoberASF, and his journey is a hikoi for hope. And so the journey is a journey of recovery from addiction. And so we'll chat a little bit, well, a lot actually, about
Beautiful.
addiction and its many forms. And, you know, of course, this is a segment about neurodiversity, and so it's not directly related, but I think most of us know by now that there's a pretty strong link. So if you have ADHD and you're seeking dopamine, or perhaps you're on the spectrum and you have a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of crossover with developing addictions. And sometimes they're really obvious and sometimes they're less obvious, but it's all there. So yeah, it's really great to have you here.
Oh,
Grateful for
thank
your
you.
time.
I'm glad to
And
be here.
yeah, there's so much to talk about, but I'd love to just hear a little bit about your story from earlier on in life. So, you know, the path that led you to addiction, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I suppose I'll skip through my childhood really quickly.
Mm.
Um, one of my earliest memories was of um, my mother's house in Tasmania, a house that she built by hand when she was about 19. One of my earliest memories is of that burning down and seeing water spout through the fire from one of the kitchen faucets.
Mm.
And then it wasn't long after that that we moved back to New Zealand, and I met my stepfather, and
Mm.
which I call Dad, um, my dad, and we wound up traveling. I grew up backpacking a lot of my childhood, so didn't have a lot of sort of official education.
Mm.
And the schools that I did go to were sort of like years apart, and in between was correspondence. Um, and so when I finally did go to a mainstream college when I was 15, I sort of didn't fit in. I mean, I'm a
Mm.
6'5" man. I was already 6'5" by that stage, and kids sort of thought that I was different than them. I mean, I was living in the middle of a town, and I would like still milk the cows by hand and then make my way to school. And so I was different than most of the kids. And so that would often wind up kids wanting to fight me because I was big. And
Mm.
it was a lot to deal with. And I tried to seek help from my parents, and they for whatever reason, weren't able to sort of be there for me. Um, we can get more into some of that stuff later on if you'd like.
Mm.
But when I was 15, I left home, and um, an adult man, so I would remember he was probably in his early 20s, um, told me that if I sniffed solvents, so specifically that was um, petrol, and he showed me how to do that, that it would sort of help me deal with my emotions. And the thing is that it did, it
Mm.
it allowed me to leave my body automatically, and in a
Yeah.
real way. Now that I really look back at it, I know what was happening. Um,
Mm.
so so I actually yeah would leave my body, and I could look down at myself and I'd sort of be on the ground, having a fit for lack of oxygen. So really, what was happening was a near-death experience, and so I would have these kind of experiences on a daily basis for 4 years, really. But that same week that I moved out of home, I also had my first drink, really. I might have had a sip of wine or beer here and there, but it wasn't really a part of our family life. And when I had my first drink, it wasn't it wasn't normal from the very beginning. Some other kids that I knew had come back with lots of bottles of alcohol from somewhere that they got it where they shouldn't have, and I had my first 40 ounce of whiskey, and that same day I actually drank a bottle of gin as well, which is like one bottle for a 15-year-old is a lot, but two, like that's really should have really been in hospital, and I should have been in hospital because I remember quite clearly that I was vomiting my bile for days after that, and that was the beginning of my my journey with addiction.
And that's a pretty intense story, and such a moment to look back on as an adult and a parent, to see that an adult gave you that advice, and we're presuming that that adult had also experienced a lot of stress, a lot of trauma. Who knows what they experienced to put them in that position.
Exactly. Why did they think it was a good idea in the first place?
But that's really interesting about you say leaving the body, because most substances give us some sense of that, but this was actually pretty extreme, that sense of looking down. And this is an experience that a lot of people who are, differently thinking on the spectrum or whatever it is, there's a tendency to, as a default, actually not be quite in the body. And to be kind of like floating above the self. And it's almost like not a vibrational match to be in the body. Like it's uncomfortable to be fully here. So I'll find ways to be out. And this was just a pretty extreme way of doing that. And I'm guessing, once you experienced it, it's like, oh yeah, well, I'm going back there.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is it actually I had those experiences before I even ever had any substance. So when I was a teenager, I was growing quite quickly, and there was 1 month where I grew 1.5 inches, which was sort of incredibly painful for me, and so my body would cramp, and I'd be living out in a caravan on the farm. I think I was about between 12 and 13, and I'd be living in a caravan sort of away, just a little bit away from the main house where my brothers and sisters were. And I would cramp, and it would be like every muscle from every single toe, my calf muscles, my thighs, my arms, the tendons in my neck, and it would all just cramp, and I'd cramp so hard I'd sort of be in the fetal position, and I couldn't get out of that, and I couldn't get out of that, and I couldn't really cry out because nobody could really hear me, and my whole body would start humming, and I would start feeling heavier and heavier, and then I'd sort of wake up out of myself, And so, yeah, that sort of happened a lot as a teenager, as a young teenager, and I often would have experiences with I suppose what I call sort of dimensional beings, or
Yeah,
you know, like
entities or like,
entities,
yeah.
or like some part of our own mind, you know, our own subconscious. But to me, it definitely felt like I was outside of my body. So when I was 15 and started sniffing glue, I'd sort of, in a way, I'd already experienced that, and to be able to, in a way, the funny thing is, like, it's like you are very much out of control when you are sort of under the influence of sniffing solvents, but you're very much in control when you make it happen. So,
Yeah, I've got control over something, and it's that
yeah,
kind of, yeah.
yeah. And I really think, you know, a lot of addiction starts that way, whether we know it or not, is is either having a sort of a sense of control over the way we feel, to be able to change the way we feel, um, or yeah,
It's kind of like an escape, but yeah, as you say, you choose to do it. So you've
yeah,
got that, yeah. And yeah, and I can relate to that, and I'm sure a lot of people can. So you don't have to class yourself as an addict to have this experience. Even, you know, I would say, I mean, I was a heavy drinker as a teenager, like lots of people in New Zealand, because it's pretty normalized here.
absolutely.
And it's just that in my case, rather than drinking every day, it was that, like, okay, it's this day of the week, I'm going to drink until I fall over and can't remember. But that's okay, because like everyone's doing
It's a
it.
good time,
Yeah, everyone's doing it.
supposedly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And it was definitely, for me, it was an escape, because I was a super shy, anxious girl. I was, you know, like a nerd. And then, like, the drinking, at that point, I started to be like, okay, I'm kind of sick of this nerd identity, because, you know, I didn't really know who I actually was. I'll try and create this new party girl identity and see how that goes for me. Which was just a, you know, a different type of disaster, but it was a more socially kind of popular one, until it wasn't anymore, because then you
and
start maybe
so
hurting people or offending people, or waking up somewhere, yeah, odd. You
and
know, and this is
how
such
old were
a
you?
I started drinking it quite regularly, maybe at 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, so same, and then right through till about 21, and then I really kind of peeled it back, and then I actually quit completely about 25. Yeah,
Awesome.
I knew that it was a a situation, but yeah, so I was lucky that I stopped. Yeah, but there's so many things that we can be addicted to, and just say, like, you know, oh, it's nothing, it's
Yeah,
fine,
it's
it's
absolutely.
normal, it's yeah, it's not that bad.
Yeah,
Mm,
I suppose that's one of the really sort of profound, one of the really interesting things um, that I've discovered, really, during this hikoi, this journey of recovery and healing,
mm,
and and that was that I tried to give up drinking so many times. You know,
mm,
at about the age of 23, I began to start to have a desire to give up. I tried plenty of times, even at that age, and I started to learn about addiction. I started taking information about addiction and like store it away.
Yeah.
And yeah, so over the last 9.5 months, I've really sort of started to understand that addiction isn't really so much about a substance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That it's you know, because many of us have some sort of substance, whether that's coffee or whether that's smoking cigarettes or vaping, or whether it's a sneaky little wine, or whether it's you know, whether it's not substance, whether it's gambling, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, whether it's pornography, which is a big one these days.
Yeah.
And so I started to realize that I had been trying to give up alcohol, and I'd always been able to do that. I'd always been able to go cold turkey, which is incredibly dangerous to do when you have a very heavy addiction with alcohol. There's only two substances which you can really die from withdrawal. There are plenty that you can die from overdose,
Yeah.
but the two that you can die from withdrawal are alcohol and benzos, which, if you know, when you're a heavy alcoholic and you need to be brought down medically, they'll put you on benzodiazepam and bring you down slowly. Um, so I'd always been trying to give up alcohol, which I knew I could go cold turkey because I'd done it hundreds of times. Um, but it took for me to realize that the addiction wasn't really just to the substance, it was to the behavior. And
Yeah.
and I started going deep into trying to understand the difference between our brain, like the hardware, our mind, so like our thoughts, like our
Yeah.
thinking,
Yeah.
our personality, our, and the difference between our feelings and how they're all connected through complex chemistry.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then understanding that behaviors are sort of really neurological pathways.
Yeah, that's right. And some of them have become so strong.
Yeah,
That's, that kind of information highway. It's so hard not to default back to it.
absolutely.
And then at the same time, some of the things that we want to shift might be buried so deep in the subconscious. And that's
Beginning
when,
right back at childhood.
yeah, because the body stores everything, the subconscious stores everything. And that's when we get that thing where consciously we're trying to change, we're ready, and then it feels like some kind of sabotage, and it can be so frustrating. So it's looking at that, whatever you want to call it, the subconscious, the shadow, the emotions, all of that, and then rewiring in a new way. And I bet you've learned some really interesting things about how we can start to rewire.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So going back to like my early years was so there was always really a reason to drink. You know, there was a reason to drink. I just got a new job. Oh, yay, reason to drink. I just got fired. Oh, crap. I'll have a drink.
Yeah.
You know, I'm feeling awkward. I'm going to a party. I feel awkward. Have a drink. You know, I'm feeling happy. Have a drink. You know, and I'd drink every day, and you know, I'd have when I was younger, I used to drink vodka, and I'd have a couple of shots before every single job interview, and I'd get the job every single time because
Yeah, because
I had
you were
courage.
in the sweet spot, like
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'd always get the job. And so I learned that I learned that I could use alcohol for different situations, and you know, like when you're in a first getting into a relationship, often alcohol's involved because it's sort of a social lubricant, and you're able to sort of loosen up a little bit, and then also with intimacy, often alcohol's involved, and so there's so many different times that that we can use either different substances or different behaviors to sort of make ourselves feel comfortable. And when we use that particular substance or behavior repetitively, we are wiring that neurological pathway. And the more and more we do it, the more and more that path, that flexible path, that narrow little path through the forest, where the Maori used to walk pre-colonization, that tiny little path that eventually became like when colonization happened, it became a horse, track. At first, it used to be walked. It used to be a tiny little path through nature, and then it became a horse track and a horse and cart track, and then a car track, and then before long, that tiny little path through the forest is now a highway, and that's our behaviors. And whether those are positive or negative, we get to those places faster. So you often find like people that are into sports or people that are into sort of business, so long as it's a sort of a healthy kind of a relationship, they also have a relationship with things like dopamine, except for they've been training their neurological pathways towards healthier things.
Yeah.
Whereas whereas when we rely on certain kind of behaviors or certain kind of addictions, we are also getting that dopamine hit every single time we use those behaviors. And whether it's a positive behavior or a negative behavior, we create that pathway and we can get there a lot faster. So often with addiction, what started out as a small one is now a superhighway.
Superhighway, that's what I was going to say. It's one of those monsters, and and it is very true. So even those kind of healthy behaviors, they are, but they can still tip into an addiction as well, like the gym addict, the work addict,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Obviously keeping that all in balance and sort of understanding that that we have our brain, and then we have our mind, our thoughts, and then sort of in between there is the biology and the chemistry and things like dopamine and the effect that has on creating those neurological pathways. Sort of over the last 9 months, I have sort of gone pretty deep into that, and along with that analogy of that little track, that little neurological pathway, that little walking track through nature, through the forest, starting off like that and then winding up in a highway. The same thing with a road that can be taken out of commission, like either by a big earthquake or by something that happens in our lives, or by choosing to go on a different path. If we allow that old highway to sit unused, if we use that highway less, if we start using a different track, if we start choosing a different behavior, or if something, like I said, like a big earthquake or a big thing happens in our lives, we can deviate. And that road starts to gather, like lichen starts to grow on it. And then moss starts to grow on it. And then soil comes onto it. And then little seeds start to sprout. And slowly that road starts to grow back and it starts to look more natural and it starts to grow trees. And before long, that highway has actually reverted more to a natural state. And that's what I talk about in regards to rewiring our neurological pathways.
Yeah, and of course you can always go back to the old track, but you know, my experience, you know, in a less extreme way is you're less likely to if you're creating something else over here. So yeah, if
Absolutely.
you just try and stop without moving to something new, something more meaningful, something more, you know, productive, that has connection, that is, you know, fulfilling the parts of you that feel empty,
You're
then
always going to know where that highway was.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to go back to it if you're just trying to stop, but you're not you're not getting onto that new track.
That highway growing over, that's just like nature. That's not a fast thing.
Yeah.
It's not. That happens over like a long period of time, and I feel like every day, because it's only 9.5 months for me. But it's not 9.5 months because I've been trying to give up since I was 23, and things are very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful, which I've never sort of been before. I'm starting to feel happiness, which is amazing. And so I've sort of coined a term, which is I call it OPDAAT. OPDAAT, which is one positive decision at a time, because ODAT, which is one day at a time, was a little bit too long for me.
Yeah, there's only now and now and now and now.
Yeah,
so
so I broke that down into one positive decision at a time. And and if I can continue to do that, then that helps to do that rewiring, one positive decision at a time. And whether that's going for a walk with, you know, my huskies, spending time with my wife, going for a cold dip in the river, going for a bush walk, sort of each one of those positive decisions builds a new pathway. And just like that small track, it starts off small, but the more and more I make positive decisions, the broader that track becomes. And but it's a peaceful track, and and choosing to do things that give me a positive reward, because we can get, you know, we can get the same chemical release from, like, well, it's not the same, it's better. doing something like going for a cold dip in the river, that really spikes the dopamine and makes you feel really good, and helps to release cortisol out of the body, and really sets me up for an amazing day.
I love that. I mean, we do just have to keep choosing over and over, don't we? Because it's you know, the brain is so incredible in its plasticity, and the body and its ability to heal itself, but it does take making the choice and kind of rinsing and repeating and having some kind of faith in the bigger picture, because there's going to be times where making the choice is really hard, and or, you know, getting the motivation to do the thing that you know you'll feel better after doing, but right now you don't want to do it. So I'm wondering, was there a specific catalyst kind of this time around that shifted things for you? Or, like, why is it working this time? Or is it just a timing thing?
I think it was a combination of things. It was a big earthquake, and it was a timing thing. So
obviously you don't have to say anything personal you
yeah,
don't want to say,
yeah,
just the
yeah, yeah.
gist,
No, no. I'm a
give the
very,
gist.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
I'm very open. I'm a very open person. So
Yeah.
I've always, worked. There's been a few times in my life sort of where I've been unemployed, but I was working. I helped some friends start a new bakery. I love making coffee. It's one of the things that I've done. I've started like a couple of my own cafes in the past, and I love chatting to people. And I it's one of those jobs. It's one of those jobs where you can kind of get away with drinking if you can get away with it. And so a combination of coffee and alcohol, and I'd be drinking away, not at work, always before and after. But my drinking really sort of became heavier and heavier for me. And I don't mean the amount that I drank. It's just with age and like the way the addiction with substance really like starts to have a big impact on your body and your mind. Um, I could feel myself getting sicker and sicker. I felt I felt death very closely. I've had that sort of relationship throughout my life. I've had quite a number of near-death experiences, but I felt it very closely, like it was coming for me. My organs weren't feeling good. I felt like I could have a stroke. I felt like pressure in my heart. My depression, my depression was sort of really next level. So some of that stuff that I talked about earlier, were having experiences with entities when I was younger, that's continued throughout my life. Um, I've had some really positive sort of out of body experiences, and some of them quite terrifying, which is often the case with addiction or trauma. Um, and so I really was desperate to stop. I just sort of didn't know how. And then I don't remember exactly what the reason was, but I drank way too much over a short period of time, and I could feel sort of psychosis coming in, and I could feel that I wasn't safe, and um, I wanted to keep myself safe and also my family.
Yeah.
And so I called an ambulance for myself, and I wound up in hospital. And um, they put me on benzos to bring me down, but because our medical system's sort of a little bit broken, or really broken, really broken. I was just put into a normal hospital bed. I wasn't seen by mental health or the addictions team, and so I kept on being given the same dose of diazepam sort of every 4 hours or so, apart from if I was sleeping. And then the very next day after being in there, I asked to see the mental health addiction team, and they said that they would come and see me like lunchtime, and then lunchtime would come and go, and nobody would turn up, and then they would still be giving me the same dose of diazepam, where you're supposed to be brought down,
Going down. Yeah.
going down, and I wasn't going down. And anybody that has used diazepam know how floaty and how it can be a very nice kind of a feeling, but incredibly dangerous and very, very, very addictive. And so on one hand, I enjoyed the feeling of the sense of like calm that it brought me after coming, using that to come off alcohol. But at the same time, I knew that I wasn't being brought down. And this happened, I kept on asking day after day when I'd be seen by the mental health and addiction team. And I think it was day 6, I was still on the same dose. I hadn't been seen by the mental health and addiction team. I pulled out my laptop and I pulled up the Code of Rights, the Health and Disability Code of Rights, which actually covers all of us, not just people with a disability.
Yeah.
And I showed that I had the right to be informed about my treatment, that I had the right to have treatment in a timely fashion, and so on and so forth. And the head nurse, kind of like, I don't know what she brought with her that day, but she was very dismissive of me, and I felt like she didn't care. I don't remember exactly what she said, but it made me feel like she didn't care. And so I thought, well, I'll show you. And I went back to my bed where there was 1.5 liters of hand sanitizer at the end of my bed.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I proceeded to go to the family room and get juice sachets and mix myself cocktails in hospital. And that's while I was on diazepam. I drank 1.5 liters of 70% hand sanitizer in hospital, and that led me to a state of psychosis. And in that psychosis, I had a moment of clarity, and I knew how to get myself sober. And I came up with a plan to go out into nature and spend time in nature and get myself sober. And that's exactly what I did. I had to leave hospital. They kicked me out of hospital, made me sign a release form. And so I signed the release form. I went to my mum's house because that felt safe. And my wife needed to keep on going to work. And so I got a couple of dozen beers and I brought myself all the way down. And I planned a trip to the South Island. And I called that my hikoi of hope, my journey of recovery and healing from mental health, addiction, and trauma.
Wow. Yeah, what a story. It's amazing the things that can be the shift, because that could have been the thing that kind of finished you off. But in this case, it was, it was the opposite, which is incredible and an interesting story for other people to follow, because I mean, people could fill books and books of stories from people who felt let down by the system, particularly when it comes to mental health and addictions. There tends to be this situation where they're like, well, you have to basically be dying because we're not resourced. And if you're not, then...
Yeah, well, in that case, I was very close to dying.
And you were informed, you were kind of doing the right thing, you were advocating for yourself. and still
I actually,
yeah.
it wasn't just on that 6th day that I brought that up. I brought that up. I brought up the Health and Disability Code of Rights probably from day 3, and it still didn't help me, which is really, really quite sad. But it's also interesting that sometimes in our most desperate moments is sort of that catalyst to change. Sometimes it can be incredibly hard. It can be incredibly hard to change when everything's just sort of ticking along.
Yeah, that's right. That's why people say I had to reach the rock bottom, or for some people, they do whatever. They go on a ayahuasca retreat in Peru, and that's their moment. Or there's lots of different ways to reach it.
Which actually, there's a lot of positive research into in the right setting, and obviously some people are very susceptible to using that kind of thing, and it can also be quite dangerous. But for some people with PTSD, with childhood trauma, with addictions, the success rates of things like ayahuasca and psilocybin can be incredibly high. But obviously, a lot of respect needs to be sort of used before considering something like that, or a lot of research and
Yeah, definitely. It's just one example of a way to shift your normal thinking, and it creates that kind of alternate route, that opening into a different pathway. And there's
that's
many ways to get there.
That's what I believe actually happened to me. That the combination, like horrible, terrible, but the combination of that diazepam and 1.5 liters of 70% hand sanitizer got me to a state where I was able to have some sort of deep realizations, and hopefully people can have some sort of like deep realizations without having to get to those kind of states, because it's incredibly dangerous. Like I wish that I was able to just start off by making one positive decision at a time. But unfortunately I was stuck in a loop for 31 years, and I'd been trying to give up since the age of 23. But when I did start planning, I brought myself down to 1 beer. And before I'd done that, this is in the middle of winter, I started going down to the river every day and doing cold water immersion. And I'd heard about it for years and years, but this is when I first started practicing it on a regular basis. And I noticed that I'd start walking around with a smile, and I'd start feeling really good. And I'd only just like literally finished my the last beer, and I started planning this hikoi of hope that came together, that came from this sort of moment of clarity in psychosis. And I called it a hikoi of hope, and I started posting on Facebook right then and there. Like literally, I think I started posting on Facebook before I even finished my last beer, and started talking about my addiction, and started sharing what I was going to do. And I started writing a story, and I printed it out, and I started knocking, because addiction, I've had good jobs. I've had a very varied career. I've been a hairdresser and a makeup artist. I've worked as an industrial abseiler. So my team, or the team I worked with, were the first on site after the Kaikoura earthquakes. We worked with a lot of helicopters, and did a lot of work before any of the heavy machinery could get in below. And there's a lot of control around my drinking with that too, because you can be breathalyzed at any time. But I started planning my hikoi, and I wrote my story of being addicted since the age of 15 and what my plan was. And that's right, because alcohol takes a lot. So even though I've had good jobs, I didn't have any savings. Um, and to get into a rehab, like a mid-tier rehab is $20,000 for 4 weeks, mid-tier, and you haven't even begun to heal after 4 weeks. You're really just you're really just detoxed. Yeah. And then there's free ones which you can get into if you're on the benefit, but because my wife technically is over the threshold, there was no help available for me there. And I'm a little bit too much of a rebel anyway, a little bit too divergent anyway. And so I started planning my Hikoi of Hope, and I wrote my story and started knocking on business doors and telling them my story. To be honest, I think I might have been still a little bit like a little bit of psychosis there. And I literally knocked on the door of Pack and Save and asked to speak to the manager or the owner and the warehouse and anybody that I could talk to, telling them about what I was going to do. And I was posting this on Facebook publicly. Started a Give a Little campaign telling my story, and that was quite hard because there was a lot of judgment. Look, with Give a Little, you can literally be like an individual that's going to Germany to go swimming.
That's right. You can have a Give a Little for anything. It doesn't matter how frivolous or
yeah, it can be for a basketball tournament in America, or but because mine was my addiction, wanting to recover from my addiction, then that automatically put me in the same league as people with like cancer and stuff like that. And how dare you start a Give a Little, because you're taking away from people that actually need it. And it was name calling, and that was really painful. And it was really painful at the same time as trying to stay positive about the way that I was going to heal myself. But I had a really awesome experience where I went and knocked on the door of Otaki hunting and fishing.
Nice.
And I told them what I was going to do, and that I didn't have enough outdoor gear to sort of go hiking in the mountains, and would they be able to help me? And sure enough, to my astonishment, the owner said yes, and he helped to deck me out with all the cold weather gear that I'd need, and food supplies, and that was amazing, because he was a businessman that heard my story, this crazy alcoholic, and for whatever reason decided to say yes. And I asked him if he really had any friends who were alcoholics or family or anything like that, and he sort of said no. And so to this day, it still amazes me that he said yes. And that was such an amazing feeling, to have a stranger. I don't know if he believed in me, but he was giving me a chance.
It's kind of like an example of grace, isn't it? It's like he didn't have to do that, and rationally, why would he? But he did, because it's that shared humanity, and he just had that feeling that he was going to do it, and he felt to do it.
And so I raised $1,600, and I went to the South Island. I went hiking in the Southern Alps, in just some beautiful remote places. I had a friend sort of guide me for that mountain portion, and then after that, I went and lived in a hut next to the Arahura River in the South Island in Hokitika. And it was a little hut that had solar power, had a camping toilet and an outdoor shower, and I lived there for 2 months. And I spent a lot of time in sort of deep thought and nature and praying and meditating and using AI to research neurology, which
It's
was
yeah, the world we live in now, it's so amazing. We have access to this really deep esoteric wisdom, and we have access to all of this technology. And it can be overwhelming, but it can be also incredible. Yeah.
it was a combination of, for me, a combination of deep solitude, being in nature,
Yeah.
and also using AI is really how I began to heal myself. And, you know, like a part of me, like anybody else that's sort of been following AI, is quite scared about that future, because, like, does it take over? You know,
Yeah.
and all the
Yeah.
rest,
Like in the movies. Yeah. Yeah.
all the rest of that. But
Yeah.
what I found was that I had access to, yes, all the esoteric stuff. I had access to psychology. I had access to spiritual information. I had access to biology, through AI, and I began to, and counseling, and I began to have a conversation and start to build the answers to my questions, about human behavior, about the mind, about the brain, about the chemicals behind our feelings and behaviors, and from that, I began planning, my well, I was already in my recovery, but I began planning my future, and and it was really incredible. It was incredible to be able to. It was incredible to be able to use AI to counsel myself,
Yeah.
because I had paid for counselors like throughout the years, and some people have amazing experiences where they're really able to connect with somebody, and they're able to really get a lot from their counseling sessions, or um, but for me, I hadn't been able to really connect with anybody, no matter how many times I'd tried. And I began to use AI to counsel myself, and it was incredible. It was like having the best counselor that I've ever had.
Because it's specifically for you, whereas a counselor is so variable in how you connect or don't connect. And I have a friend who I won't name, who was a psychologist, and she uses AI as her counselor in her car, and she's like, oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, because it's like you are counseling yourself.
Yeah, which is what it's all about anyway, because it's always comes back to the self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's really an awesome part of my journey, because it's like really bizarre, because I was like, here I was in a solar powered hut in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nature, using AI to counsel myself.
Yeah, but you had a phone charger, obviously.
I had I had solar power.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had solar power, and you know, there was still a connection. Um, and I also, began to began to write a lot. Like I mentioned earlier on, that I had sort of very little schooling as a young person, and some of it was correspondence, but not really. Sort of my education was like growing up, traveling, backpacking, and so I can't really. I'm not good at spelling. I have no idea where, you know, like, I have no idea where grammar goes.
That's all right. We have spell check now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I can dictate, I can talk,
Mm-hmm.
and so I became pretty prolific with writing, and I wrote 30 odd songs while I was away in 2 months. I wrote a lot on like addiction, and yeah, and that's where in the South Island, because I was sharing like on a daily basis, I went from sort of 200 Facebook friends, and like I've never cared about popularity at all. Like I don't really care about that, but it was about sharing my message and my journey, and I went from 200 Facebook friends to sort of 5,500, 5,600 followers now over this 9-month period. And I began sharing, and so I started to call this it was Hikoi of Hope, Journeys of Recovery and Healing. And then I would have a daily conversation with a guy that let me live in his hut, a man called Luke Hurley. Shout out Luke Hurley. And Luke Hurley is absolutely neurodivergent. Luke Hurley is a street musician and a rebel, and he identifies as being autistic, and he's very intelligent and hilarious. And so he would call me on a daily basis or multiple times a day, and we would talk, and we started to plan Hikoi for Hope, Journeys of Recovery and Healing, and also SoberASF. And I now have 2 groups, one SoberASF New Zealand and the other one SoberASF Worldwide. And then those are just small groups where people are able to share their journeys. I started sharing my journey on SoberASF NZ, and then now there's only, I think, close to 300 people on that, but it's starting to become something really meaningful to people, where they're able to share their journeys. And so myself and Luke would talk, and he said to me the reason that he let me live in his hut down there was because he had lost his father to addiction. His father died of alcoholism. He lost friends to alcoholism. And then not long ago, he lost his brother to alcoholism. And so it was something close to his heart. He also struggled with that as a young person. So like he didn't know that he was on the spectrum when he was younger.
He just felt like an alien, basically. However he describes it, but it's that kind of feeling.
You felt like an alien.
I don't fit.
And he's an incredible musician, Luke Hurley, and so so we started planning not just my recovery, because he said that he had a thought that occurred to him that if he could get the right one person, if he could help, because he's been trying to help people for a long time. He loves getting himself involved in other people's business.
It doesn't always land, right?
He loves like trying to help people, and even though his own life is like chaos. And he wanted to find, he says, the right person to help, because he knew that if he could find the right person to help, that they would be able to help lots of other people. And
it's so true, isn't it? Like, because sometimes you think I'm not reaching many people, but if you meet each person as if they're the most important person in that moment, because they are, you never know how much of a ripple effect that's going to
I love that, the ripple effect. And so we started planning this and how we were going to help other people, and became a big part of my sobriety. Like, it's not just it's not, yeah, I suppose you've got to do your own healing. You've got to do your own healing. But
Yeah.
anybody that's worked with any sort of addiction or sort of behavior stuff is like a big thing can be a big part of your healing can actually be service.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that because often with these kind of behaviors, we don't have a sense of like meaning in our lives.
Mm.
And so it's given me a like a renewed sense of purpose, and it's pretty amazing. Um, so he would talk about like wanting to help a lot of people, and um, I already knew from when I was younger. I used to put on some quite big events, um, youth events, and I already knew like the way that we influence a lot of people is by um, creating one relationship at a time,
Mm.
and like sharing with one person at a time, because that's really how movements are built, is through relationship,
Yeah.
and connecting in a real way,
Mm.
because that's another really big thing is we are more connected than ever through the internet and through social media, but where is it's sort of there's a few different generations involved with this, but
Mm.
we're often much more disconnected than ever before, and so I think that a lot of the time we feel a profound sense of disconnection, and not knowing where we fit in, and
Yeah.
a big part of my healing is developing relationship, and having meaningful relationship.
Yeah. It's so easy to feel like we're doing it alone, but and then, at the same time, there's so many people all around us feeling exactly the same thing. It's just about making the connection, and a really meaningful connection, as you say, not a surface level. It's easy to stay on the surface with all of our fancy social media and
Yeah,
yeah,
likes, and yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it absolutely is. And scrolling, mindless scrolling. And, that's another big, it's another big thing is our relationship with technology, and like sort of like how we view friendship.
like it's
Um,
a commodity kind of, and it's interesting you're saying about the piece of relationship building, because I don't know how you feel about it. I think it's more nuanced than that, but some people talk about addiction as basically a connection deficit,
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
it can be connection to, well, you can look at it in the big picture: connection to self, connection
Yeah,
to others,
yeah.
connection to spirit, God, whatever you call something kind of higher. And it doesn't need to be religious, but it can be.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I 100%, I completely agree. Yeah. So I say, like, that often in this day and age we feel disconnected from ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, in Maori, your wairua, your spirit.
Mhm. Mhm.
But for people that are not necessarily spiritual, that they can still relate to the inner world or the inner
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah.
So disconnection from our inner world, a disconnection from family, a disconnection from friends, because often it's done through social media. Um, 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 and then a disconnection from our environment, the world, the natural world around us. And we live in busy cities or towns, and everything's electrified, and we go about our routines and our daily jobs and the daily pressures that we have of paying bills and just trying to get by. And so we forget to often like connect with nature and how profound that is on our well-being. We you know, like we can have electrodes put on our heads and measure our brain waves and the frequency of the brain. And you know, like when you go into a deep state of sleep or a state of meditation, the brain operates at a certain frequency. When we're in distress, it's in a certain kind of frequency. And then there's like you can actually measure the vibration or the frequency. This is scientifically of nature, of the earth itself. Actually, the earth resonates. And when we take time out of our daily lives to either go down to the beach or to go for a bushwalk and spend time in nature, within about 15 minutes, our frequencies start to harmonize, and it can have a profound effect on our biology, on the chemical release in our body, and yeah. So I think that disconnection from our inner world, disconnection from our family and friends, and disconnection from our environment is really big.
Yeah, I agree. And with the nature piece, it's so, we all kind of know it. We all know we feel better if we walk barefoot along the beach or we go into the forest. But yeah, it can just fall off the priorities list. And it's, yeah, I've always been a big nature girl. It's so
beautiful.
Yeah, that was my original spirituality. I was always a nature girl, and it's just remembering to do those simple things. You know, like actually go out for the walk, actually go into the water, actually stop and breathe. And it's almost boring because it's so simple, but those are the things that add up.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds boring. It sounds boring until you do it enough.
Just as in not glamorous, but it's the real deal. Like,
But when you start doing it as a practice, you begin to feel that deep, like it starts to heal, you know, and you start to want to do that. And it doesn't feel mundane or boring anymore, because you see those special little moments, you know, where the bird flies by or the fantail comes close, or, you know, like when the waves are, you know, peaking, and or the sound of the rain, and those things can become sort of deeply comforting.
Yeah, there's so much incredible beauty everywhere when we're paying attention. Yeah.
And then the other thing sort of that I have noticed is you know, in my healing, that my relationships have with like family and stuff have really started to grow. And you know, things that have been painful for me, things that have been painful for my family, have there's a lot more connection, and it's pretty amazing.
It's like, because you're being you know, all those buzzwords, you're being authentic, you're being vulnerable, but you know, the buzzwords are true in this case. And you know, people can really feel that. it would kind of radiate out, and then it creates that kind of safe opening for them to relate to you in a potentially a completely different way, almost sometimes as if they're a different person.
That's what it feels like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's true because because we're becoming different people,
Mm-hmm.
one positive decision at a time. And
Yeah.
so I often think that, in our relationships, it's like a mirror,
Yeah. Yeah.
that 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 each situation that's sort of ever happened, like um, arguing with family members, or that's like a mirror of your internal world. And um,
Yeah.
it sounds strange, but sometimes it's like we're having a conversation with ourselves,
No. Yeah.
and we're because I kind of sometimes think that we're sort of a part of a greater consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
that we all are really, consciousness. And um, and yeah, it's often what's lacking in our relationships, or the disconnection, or the hurts. Those are that's all really from our inner world.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And it's not to say that sometimes crappy things don't happen and it appears at least as if someone else is involved, but it's, annoying but true that we can only we can only change ourselves, and then
Yeah,
it's incredible what does shift
yeah, yeah.
when we
No,
can
definitely,
shift our
definitely,
own perspective. Yeah.
definitely crappy things do happen, and there's things outside of our control, and
Mm-mm.
and um, and that kind of thing. But but yeah, it's been amazing to see my relationships change, and um, and the and new connections as well.
Mm.
Um, New people come into my life, and it's amazing because
Yeah, yeah, and probably like with incredible synchronicity because you're kind of lining yourself up, like
yeah,
yeah.
I don't even know really how it all happens. It's really
Mm,
amazing, and I just say that for me, it feels like it's just because of one positive decision at a time,
mm,
and building on that, and being intentional. And so um, I'm still just finding my way. Like, it's only 9.5 months, but
yeah.
I'm incredibly grateful, and I feel pretty I feel pretty amazing. Actually, I didn't even mention that that, I've got shingles at the moment, which is incredibly painful.
Oh,
Um, which is
but you're
incredibly,
still here.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because I feel amazing.
Mm,
Even though it's like some people say it's worse than broken bones, but I feel amazing because I'm in much less pain than I used to be in.
yeah, it's all relative, and now you've got
Yeah,
your kind of purpose, and yeah, so those things
yeah,
aren't such a big deal. It's
yeah,
yeah.
and and yeah. So through again, it's interesting because, like, a friend of mine said social media is for socializing and commenting and connecting, and so many of us can just scroll and scroll and scroll,
Mm.
endless scrolling,
Zoning out,
and
yeah.
zoning out, and look, it's important to disconnect from, like, technology completely, but we also have the ability to have these kind of conversations. We also have the
Mm.
ability, like, to call our friends and actually,
Yeah.
like, try and have meaningful conversations, and, like, really connect, and, like, really be intentional about spending our time together. and that's been really profound for me. And when I can like actually use that to get into in contact in the real world, to try and connect in the real world. If we can't connect in the real world, then this is also a pretty amazing way, because through my journey, I went from 200 Facebook friends to 5,600 sort of followers, and I'm very humbled by that, because that was never my intention. And because I started sharing so openly from the very beginning of my journey, including I had one big lapse. I don't get into terminology with that. Some people tell me it's a lapse, and some people tell me it's a relapse, and I just say it was I just say it was an effort moment, and I had a big lapse. I went out and I bought a bottle of vodka, 4 bottles of wine, and 12 strong beers, and proceeded to drink those in 3 days. And but when I came out of that after 3 days, I posted publicly and said that I'd had a lapse, and because when I started sharing my journey, I was going to share everything, not just.
And I think that honesty is so powerful, because then people can connect and be real as well.
Yeah. And not just all of the highs, because like there can be a lot of wins when you start getting yourself sober. Like things start to line up, and so to somebody that's still in quite a like a difficult place, or even a dark place, it can be hard to watch. Sometimes it can be incredibly inspiring, and sometimes it can be hard to watch people that are being so sort of positive. And
that's
so
right. We've all had those moments of like, screw you and your shiny life, like
and through that sort of sharing and using social media to connect, and to socialize, to really connect with other people, it's been like incredibly profound. It's been I'm trying to sort of rein in, like, to try and like take control of my time a little bit more, because I have been spending anywhere from 6 to sort of 12 hours, and it's even been more. Like, it's been 15 hours talking to people from all over the world, from from my own backyard here in Otaki, to LA, to New York, Dubai, Australia, London, France, all over the world. And it's pretty amazing. And I feel really humbled, but people were able to reach out and share things with me which they haven't been able to share with very many people before. And so that's it's been quite incredible.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And of course, hopefully, as the group or the movement expands, people within the groups will more and more be able to connect with each other and support each other, and
which is definitely
be
happening.
real with each other. And that's magic.
Which is definitely happening within those smaller groups. But also, like, now when I talk to people, when people tell me how desperate they are, when they tell me how desperate they are to, because it's not just alcohol that people talk to me about, gambling, sex addiction, whatever it is, and I asked them I ask them to do one thing for me. I'd say, well, you remember how you feel now. Like, if you can get yourself, well, because I'm just a witness. I'm just here to walk beside you. You know, if you're going to do this, this is you. But you remember how you feel now. When you get yourself healed, I want you to help at least one other person. And and yeah, and so there's already some pretty cool stories out there. People
Yeah, that's
sharing,
awesome.
and you know, the ripple effect. I won't say where in the world, but I'm talking to a lady that's, her father's the head of a large like criminal organization, and she's over a month and a half sober. And
Wow.
like we talk about like the ripple effect. Another man, he's coming up to 2 months sober. But alcohol is just like the catalyst for like gambling, A-class, you know, um, using escorts, and all of that's gone. Cigarettes, because he's not drinking, and that's that's really really profound and like really humbling. And look, some of us are going to, you know, like have lapses or relapses, or but I think profound things can happen when we share honestly and openly with each other, and show our vulnerability, and because because often we we feel like we need permission, and we can give each other permission, and we can like I talk about rising together.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so good. So we'll start to kind of wrap up for today. There's so much more we could talk about, but yeah, and there's been so much gold in this conversation that's applicable to everyone actually. So we've been talking about addiction, but the lessons are the same for small hurdles in life, larger hurdles in life, and definitely in terms of, you know, being more open-hearted with our fellow humans, and seeing what a difference it makes. So yeah, so thank you so much for being here. I will share whatever links you want to share in the description box.
Beautiful, thank you.
Yeah, so much gratitude. And any parting words for this evening?
Yeah, no, and thank you for getting in touch with me. Like, yeah, I really appreciate that, and hopefully we can continue to have conversations. And thank you for sort of steering me a little bit, because I can jump all over the place. And thank you.
I know lots of people like this, funnily enough. Yeah.
And thank you to you that are out there watching. And just want to say, if you're going through something which is really difficult, if you're in a dark moment, if you're in a place which is hard to see your way out of, there is a way out, and that's within you, and you can choose to make one positive decision at a time.
Yeah, perfect. I love it. All right. So we'll see you next
Okay.
time
Yeah.
on Neurodiversity Controversy. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
Big love.